Hello, everyone. Welcome to the new and latest edition of our Embracing AI webinar. And nice to see everybody online. I hope you can all see the slides. So if someone can see it, or Edward, please confirm that you can see the slides from your end. Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we'll get started. And again, welcome to everyone that's here. And I had put a note that would start a couple minutes after just to give people time to join. But it's now 4 minutes after, and we'll get started. So today's conversation is going to be about essentially what are the key questions you need to ask when it comes to AI and navigating that space? And a lot of companies are still, especially in Ghana, beginning to think about how do they incorporate AI? Do they incorporate AI? Who is going to do it on their behalf in terms of do they have the internal skills or not? And people are really kind of on both sides of the fence when it comes to this. So today's conversation is about facing the fact that AI is not going anywhere. It is a part of our lives and will be a part of our lives very much the same way computers became a part of our lives and everything else. And so it's not really about saying it won't last. It's rather, how are we going to embrace it? And that's what's behind today's session. So I'll go through a number of slides and then open it up to questions. And you're free to ask any question that you want as it relates to the subject. So let me just make sure that, Edward, can you see my cover slide? I just want to make sure. One more time. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my video for the moment until we get through the slides, and then I'll come back on and we'll have a conversation. So let me do that. Okay, so that we focus on the slide. So in the actual flyer that went out, it said 5 questions that leaders should answer for their 2026 strategy. The good news is you're going to get a bonus 3 questions. And so today we're going to be tackling 8 questions that you need to ask. But before we even go into the questions, one of the things that I wanted us to be able to do is just make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what AI is and how it's used and the different types as well. So the first thing that I will do is really come back to the definition of what AI is. And so artificial intelligence is really anything that enables machines to perform tasks that would typically require human intelligence. That's it in a nutshell. And there are 3 main types of AI that I think we need to be aware of and kind of just understand the differences between. So the first is predictive AI. This is a traditional AI that has been with us for decades. And predictive AI in its simplest form is, the AI will look at different patterns, and based on the patterns or trends, it will predict a particular behavior or something that's to happen. So the perfect example of predictive AI is a weather forecaster. It's simply forecasting based on past trends. The second type of AI is generative AI. And this is what came about when ChatGPT came into existence in 2022. And with some people call it Gen AI. So if you hear the term Gen AI, it's what it means is generative AI. Generative AI now goes one step beyond predictive AI to now create things for you. So you can give it a prompt, and most of us here use ChatGPT, I would say, quite often, where you give it a prompt and it creates on your behalf. And that's kind of where I would say maybe about 90% of the population that uses AI is currently. Now, where we are headed, and for some of you, this may be completely new. For others, you may be hearing about it or playing around with it. But where we are now is agentic AI. The difference is agentic AI is now going another step further and not only asking AI to give you a response or create something for you. Agentic AI is now saying, I want the AI to actually do something for me. So I want it to take an action on my behalf, either with my supervision or without my supervision. It could be one or the other. So agentic AI is what has kind of come and become a real game changer to how companies are going to be adopting AI in the future. Yes. So to give you an example of how AI is being used in real world cases, and a lot of these are even agentic type solutions. One, when you look at customer engagement, most of us know chatbots. That's kind of where most people's familiarity lies, but it can go way beyond that. So AI is able to do things like, you know, gauge sentiments from customers. So imagine that your customer is sending you an email or they're chatting with you through the chat bot. You can actually use AI to look at the sentiment based on certain keywords or certain phrases that they may be using to even begin to sense that the customer is not happy. And so you can actually intervene proactively. So you can do things like that. You can use AI to do automated routing where instead of a customer calling, talking to someone, giving them a full explanation, only to be passed to another person to have to give the same explanation again, on and on and on. AI can actually intervene, assess what the client needs, and patch them through to the right person. So from a customer engagement standpoint, that's one option. Another, it's being used in recruitment and onboarding quite a bit, where you can use it to screen resumes. And it's something that is, for example, there's a solution we built for someone that you can screen hundreds of resumes literally within a few minutes, extract the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate, even be able to give a preliminary recommendation to the HR team. So you can use it to screen CVs, you can use it to send out emails on your behalf in a sequence, not only one at a time or one action at a time. You can use it to help with employee onboarding. On the sales and marketing side, from a sales standpoint, you can use it to create customized proposals. If you work with RFPs or you need to respond to RFPs, you can use it to actually analyze the requirements and create tailored responses. You can use it even with objection management and helping you to manage how do you respond appropriately or correctly or in a compelling way when you receive certain objections. On the marketing side, you can use it to do personalized campaigns. I think marketing is maybe one of the ways it's used most heavily in generating content. So people are quite familiar with that. When it comes to financial management, you can use it to do due diligence, like analyzing financial statements, credit histories, detecting fraud through suspicious transactions, certain types of behaviors that may be abnormal. You can use it to even do KYC, so due diligence on customers. Another thing on the upside, you can also use it to automate processes. You can use it to, from a predictive analytics standpoint, to manage inventory, defects, shipping. You can use it from a compliance standpoint. If you have deposits coming in or withdrawals, you can use it to manage that. So all of this to say, there is a range, a very, very broad range of use cases that you can use AI to do. Now, let me go to the next slide. Here is the challenge for leadership, and herein lies kind of where most people get stuck. So there is growing pressure on leaders to implement AI. The challenge is a lot of the business leaders are under pressure. They feel they're under pressure from their boards, from their investors to adopt AI quite quickly. But very few of them, 3 out of 10, actually feel like they're equipped to do so. So that's one problem. And because of that problem, what happens is that many of them drag their feet and they delay and they go around and around and around, not to commit because they're not sure about the risk. They're not sure that they have the right talent. They're not sure about even the return on investment. So it's a real problem for leaders because they're being pushed from all sides, but they don't have the tools that they need to make the decisions. So are they right to hesitate? That's the question. My answer is yes, very much so, because the statistics are actually quite shocking where 80%, there was a study done, this was in South Africa in 2024, and they realized that 80% of AI projects fail. Another study showed that 46%, almost half of the AI projects that even get to the proof of concept stage don't go any further. And it's for good reason, and I'll explain the reasons very quickly. But the fact is, leaders, they're under pressure, and they do have a right to be concerned and to essentially drag their feet. The thing is, let's look at why they should be concerned and why the projects are failing. So there are 5 reasons. One, data. AI relies on data, and you need data that is clean. You need data that is in one place. You need data that can be accessed and used to train the AI. So especially in Ghana, data is a real problem for us because it's all over the place. In some cases, it's still on paper and needs to be digitized. Sometimes it's in Excel documents, Word documents, in different folders. So the whole data side is a problem for us. Another thing is lack of knowledge and skills, where companies want to go ahead with AI, but then internally, there are expertise gaps. They don't have the requisite knowledge and skills. And this happens especially in the smaller companies or the traditional industry. So that's another blocker as well. Infrastructure is also a challenge where not every company has or even knows what infrastructure is required. So again, they may think, oh, I can do this very quickly. And you see people sometimes on YouTube saying, develop this AI model or this AI agent in 30 minutes. But there's a whole lot of infrastructure and other components that tie into that that many companies are not aware of. So that's another thing that needs to be taken into account and contributes to the failure rate. And then data privacy and security is also another issue because in everything you need governance and you need to make sure that you are handling privacy, you're handling the data securely, the way it's being passed to you and the way it's being passed through to other areas. All of that needs to be handled. What policies do you have in place? Everything needs to be there, and we don't often have that. Many of us are not even sure what to go into some of those policies. And then the last bit is cost management, where again, it's AI. One of the things that I've realized is that even the big titans in the industry are struggling to price properly and to figure out the cost. And so it is very, very important when you're doing any project like this to make sure that you have some level of expert advice that can expose you to all the different bits and pieces that you need to know. But all of that to say, these are the 5 main reasons that studies show contribute to the high failure rate of AI projects. Now, am I telling you to run away? Let's see. You have a choice. Some companies are choosing to pull what I would call a Usain Bolt and completely just run in the other direction and say, you know what, it's okay. Let me just stay with what I'm doing, and we'll move on from there. We'll take it like that. That's option 1. You do have that option. Option 2 is you can actually lean in and say, you know what, I am aware of the challenges and I will do it, but I will do it in such a way to reduce the risk of becoming another one of those statistics. Those are your 2 options. Now, my advice is you should lean in, because as I said at the beginning, AI is not going anywhere. So if you decide that you're going to just ignore it and hope that it kind of goes away on its own, with a lot of certainty and confidence, I can tell you it's not going away. So therefore, what are the questions? What are the things that you can look at that will kind of help you make the best decision in a sea of a lot of uncertainty that's still there? And so the main insight that I would want everybody to operate on is that AI in and of itself is not a strategy. AI is a tool to help you achieve or implement some part of your business strategy. It is a key insight. And the reason why this insight is so key is that if you think AI is a strategy in and of itself, what you will do is you will go and pick some shiny object and say, oh, let's build this AI model. But it's not solving any problem. And it's not helping you to meet any of your core business goals. So rather, the way you need to approach it is you need to now take more of a deliberate, let me say, very systematic approach. And so the first question, and I said there are 8 that we'll actually go through. The first question is, what is the cost of waiting? So there are 3 things that you should consider. One is, if you wait and you continue with your manual processes, in and of itself, let's say it was taking you 2 days or 3 days to process documents for a certain client, just as an example. If you decide that you will not adopt AI, it will take you the same 2 to 3 days. That will not change. The cost that you put in will not change. However, when your competitors decide that they are now going to implement AI, then suddenly your 2 to 3 days puts you at a competitive disadvantage, because other people are now able to move more quickly and do the same thing more quickly. So waiting becomes expensive, not because you moved, but because you didn't move and others did, suddenly you begin to lose. So that's one cost of waiting. The second cost of waiting is that customer expectations are also rising with AI-powered competitors, and they want more. Customers, they're always demanding more. So again, if you decide that you will continue in the way you did, customers will begin to demand more and go searching for the clients or for the companies that can give them the more. So it is not to your benefit to stand still. The third reason, equally important, that you should consider when you look at the cost of waiting is talent. Employees are beginning to get very jittery around AI and the possible impact on their jobs. And so you find that a lot of them are now beginning to think, okay, how secure am I in my current job? Especially if the company has decided and told, to some extent, there are companies that are telling employees, you're still not allowed to use AI. After a while, these employees will begin to want to go elsewhere because they will realize that they're being put at a disadvantage. So the first critical question that you need to answer and look at is, if you wait, if you decide, let's put AI on pause, what is the cost to your business? So that's number one. The second thing is, you need to ask yourself, what problem do you need to solve? And this comes back to the insight that I shared, where you don't start with AI, you start with your problem. And when you figure out your problem, then AI comes in to say, okay, it can be enhanced, or it can be solved, or it can be addressed in this way. And when you start with your problem, the first thing that you want to do is you look at your business goal. And many of us, it's now September, we're moving into strategy time. What are your goals? What are you putting in your strategy? Are you trying to cut costs as a department or a company? Are you trying to increase efficiency? Are you trying to enhance your customer experience? So you look at the business goal and then you ask yourself, okay, what is preventing me from meeting this goal? Is it an operational bottleneck? Is it because there's a process or a function that's very time consuming? Are there customer touch points that need to be enhanced? Or maybe is there some competitive threat that we need to address? Only when you have done this, where you've looked at your goal, you've looked at what is preventing you from meeting your goal, then you now say, okay, what are all the ways AI can be used to help? Not the other way around. You don't build AI and then search for the problem. You find your problem first, and then you find out how can AI help you solve that. So your second question is, what's the problem you need to solve? And I think that may be the most important question of all. The third one is, what should you automate versus elevate? So when you look at AI, is good for automating. So you want to automate things that generally require a lot of doing. So data processing, content production, anything that's very routine, very manual, those are the opportunity areas for AI. So you think through, what can you automate? And then you then look at, what can I elevate? And this is where the people come in, because you now want to elevate your staff into making more decisions and doing less manual things. That's the key that you want to be able to do. So you look at, what should you automate, what should you elevate. Then you look at your data. You come back to your data situation and you look at usage. So you ask things like, how often are you using the data to make decisions? Is it rarely, sometimes, often, almost always? If you use data a lot, then it's an opportunity for AI. Another thing you look at is data readiness. So how well organized is your data? So can it help you improve? Yes or no? Then you look at accessibility. So if you need to go and get more data to even train the AI, how easily can you access it? How easily can you gather that data? So when we talk about data, these are some of the questions that you need to be asking yourself or asking your team as well. Then we look at receptiveness and literacy. So receptiveness in terms of, how receptive is your team? How open are they to adopting AI, there are some teams that are very resistant to it. And if the fastest way to kill a project is when your staff decide that they're going to sabotage it because they either feel threatened by it or they don't believe in it. So team openness is going to be very critical. Similarly, AI literacy, your team needs to understand AI, even the basics. They don't need to have PhDs in it, but they do need to understand the basics. So that's another thing. And then you need to look at talent. What's going to happen with your talent? So as a company, do you now begin to have like a certain minimum level of AI fluency that's required for the company? You look at onboarding. What will that process be to now, from day one, build AI fluency and help to create an AI enhanced mindset so people are more open to it? Training and development, you need to look at as well. Culture, what is there going to be a culture of continuous learning, continuous experimentation? Is it encouraged? Is it rewarded? And then that leads into performance management. So how are you going to be managing and rewarding your staff? And as we move more towards agentic AI, this again comes in because not only will we see management of human staff, we will also see management of AI powered staff. Number 7 is time and budget. So what's your time to implementation? Like, how quickly do you need to do this? 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or you're flexible? Budget, what is your budget? Are you constrained? Do you have a lot of budget, a little budget? So you need to know also what your budget requirements are and be able to communicate that from early so that expectations are managed all along the way. And then the 8th question is, how do you measure success? And there are three, let me say, big metrics that you want to have. One, you want to look at it from a business level. So is it increasing revenue? Is it reducing costs? Is it saving time? Is it increasing customer satisfaction? So you want to look at how do you measure success at the business level? Then you need to look at how you measure success at the technical level. And the IT teams will help with this. But even with AI, you need to measure it, you need to monitor it, you need to make sure it's performing at the level you expect it to. And depending on how critical the role is or what you're doing it. So if it's a life and death matter, your accuracy level has to be virtually perfect. If you're writing maybe ad copy or something, not so much, like there's a bit more leeway. So these are some of the things you need to look at from the technical side. And then from a user standpoint, whoever is using it, how are they also adopting it, using it? Are they seeing success in what they're doing? So these are the 8 questions. And so really, as I wrap up, it's where do we go from here? One, I would say tip number 1, collaborate. Collaborate with experts in the field. IA data is one, but the most important thing is if you don't have a really strong internal team that knows what they're doing, you're much better off collaborating from the get-go rather than trying to go it alone, hitting a wall, then you go back and now start to collaborate. You would have cost yourself unnecessary money. So you want to make sure that you do collaborate. And even in the beginning, just get expert advice to make sure you have all the different bases covered. That's number 1. Number 2, and I only have 3 tips, is don't rush the process. So when I say don't rush the process, what I mean is you start, like when we engage clients, the first thing that we do is we start with an audit. And an audit is not in the sense of like GRA kind of audit. This is an audit where we sit down and kind of go through many of the questions that I've just done and really understand the business, understand the strengths and the weaknesses as it relates to being able to implement AI, so that you know your base, you know your ground and where you're standing and starting from. So start with an AI audit, start it the right way. The next thing is then I always advocate for literacy training, AI literacy training, because the easiest way to bring team members and staff on board is to have everybody understanding the power of it, that it's not a threat, it's not coming to take their jobs, is rather coming to enhance a lot of what they will be able to do. So it's that step I find is also very, very helpful in helping to just move a project along successfully. So you do the audit, you do the literacy training, and then when you figure out whatever problem it is that you want to solve with AI, then you ask for a proof of concept. And so what the proof of concept does, really, it's having the solution built for you, a version of the solution built for you that allows you to kind of see it in action, give feedback. It also enables you to get a good sense of the cost, the architecture that's needed, the resources that will be required, the timing that will be required. So that's tip number 2. Don't rush. Like, take your time and go through the right steps. And then the last tip, number 3, is talk to me and ask me how I can help you. And so here I've given you can scan it and you'll get my calendar and you can just book a meeting for us to talk, or you can send me an email, anyone. But the whole point is we are heading into 2026. We need to be planning. Some of us are already under pressure to have this in our plans. And it's possible to do it successfully, but it helps by asking yourself, asking your team, especially if you're at the executive level, making sure that at that level you are having the right conversations, asking the right questions. And when you get through all of that, then you will see that you will significantly increase your success rate. So that actually brings me to the end of my presentation. I didn't want it to be very, very long because this is a relatively short session. So one second. I am going to open it up for questions. Let me turn on my camera one more time. And then I will throw it out for questions. So if anybody has any questions, any comments, then we can start talking about it. So you can raise your hand if you want, or you can also put your question in the, hang on, let me find my way around this. Okay, so I did get some people sent me questions as well, directly via WhatsApp. So maybe I'll start with one of those, and then you can raise your hand, and then I'll switch to you as well. So the question that someone asked, one second, let me read it, is okay, so they wanted to know what is the format for the AI literacy training and how long does it take? And so generally for the AI literacy training, let me go back, that I mentioned, it's most times between 60 minutes to 90 minutes. So like an hour to an hour and a half. And what I generally recommend is splitting it into 2, where you tend to do one for the senior management level. And then depending on the size of the company, you may also do one for mid-management and then one for regular staff, because the questions and concerns at the different levels are also sometimes quite different. So you'll find that staff may be more interested in knowing what tools should I be learning. They'll be interested in knowing, how do I protect my job? What's the outlook on that side? Whereas at the senior management level, it's, how do we really measure success? How can I be sure that we'll get return on our investment for this? So I would definitely say AI literacy is good. Generally, a meeting can take an hour, hour and a half online or in person. But I believe, especially in the initial rounds, to kind of break the groups up based on where their concerns may lie, their questions may lie, so that everybody gets the most out of that. Okay, so that's one question. The second question that I have is when it comes to, okay, so they're asking me to go back. One second, let me go back to the slide. Okay, so there was a question around AI fluency and training and development. So a lot of companies are at the beginning stages of that. One of the examples that I found was quite interesting in terms of how to measure and build, and what steps you can take for AI fluency in an organization is Zapier. So the company name is Zapier. Zapier, they're an AI automation company, but essentially what they have done and what a number of the big players are actually doing is they are, so one, they're requiring that all employees learn and know how to use AI, like at every level. So they have, for each department, the requirements may be slightly different, because IT, the requirements would be higher from a technical standpoint. But there are some companies, I think I can't remember which company it was, but even the secretary, they were saying that she should learn how to code, like the receptionist at the front. So you find that a number of the bigger companies are now saying all employees must know how to use AI. There was a memo by the CEO of Shopify earlier this year. I think it was in April. And a memo that he did to staff got released. And what it said was there were, I think, 3 or 4 policies he had put into effect. One, everybody should know how to use it. 2, he would not be approving any requests for resources, whether it be additional staff or additional, let's say, computers or anything, unless the department or the unit requesting could demonstrate that AI could not be used to solve that need. That was the second thing. Then the third thing that he introduced as well and told the staff was that when it comes to performance management, it would now be included in everybody's performance management, from the executives all the way down. Everybody use of AI would now become a measurement component. So that's the direction that a lot of companies are taking. And so there are some companies, if you do your research, they give hints towards how they're measuring it and what standards they're putting in place. But what I would say is, generally, you would want to make sure that each department has first, they need to understand how it can be used in their department. And you need to create that culture of innovation and people, being excited about it and even testing it out on their own. There's a lot that you can do just on your own. So you want to make sure that you make room for that, you encourage it, you reward it, you measure it. I would say those would be the key things. Okay, let me look at the next question. So for some reason, I seem to be getting some questions on WhatsApp. So I'll continue. But if you do have anybody who wants to raise their hand, can also do so. All right, so this one, hang on. Let me tell you what it says. Okay, let me go back to the relevant slide for this one. Go back, 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 back. Okay. So the question is about, so it says, okay, they want to understand more about the difference between the automating and the elevating decision making in terms of how do you do that at all levels of employees. So when it comes to, okay, so let me answer it from another direction. I think the biggest impact when it comes to jobs that AI will have will be for people who are junior and who are kind of just coming into the workforce. That will be kind of one big group that is affected. They will be affected because, you know, a lot of the interns. So if you think about even in Ghana, you think about national service, a lot of the times when they come in, or the people who are at the entry level of the workforce, a lot of them come in and they are being asked to do like the grunt work, like whatever is manual, tedious, everything is given to them. Now, if you can use AI to do that exact same thing, and you can get it done in minutes, you can get it done with the same level of consistency every time, you get it done for a fraction of the cost without people calling in sick, taking leave, those things. All of a sudden, companies are realizing that they don't need to invest as much at that bottom level because they would rather now invest in people who have more experience that can then use AI to manage some of these functions. So elevation, I would say, has two sides to it. One is what the company should do, and the other is what the individual should do. At the company level, the company should seek to almost change the way change the roles and how roles are defined in the company so that decision making and expertise becomes more of a priority and has more reward than just doing. So you want to really reward and encourage people to own decisions and to bring their expertise, because that's what is AI can do, but it's not 100%. It makes mistakes. And sometimes even when it doesn't make mistakes, because it doesn't have the breadth of experience that we have as humans, it still sometimes misses the context of certain situations. So you don't ever want to minimize what people do. You want to really harness the things that make them unique, and that's the responsibility that companies have going forward. On the individual side, there are things that as individuals we also need to do in this new kind of normal that we find ourselves, where we also need to now up our game and begin to learn to use the tools, learn which ones work for what, um, and really take that ownership of learning so that we can make ourselves more valuable and so that we can now begin to differentiate ourselves from what AI is able to do at that level. So when it comes to elevating, there are the two sides to it. On there's so much that we can automate away, that we don't need to do anymore. And it is, yes, it is threatening to a certain level or disconcerting. Done. Oh, sorry. Hi. I don't know. I think my internet went. It's raining. But Edward, can you hear me? You're my
Yes,
sound check.
yes, Julia, welcome back.
Okay. Okay. So I'll go back to sharing the slide. But anyway, all what I was just saying is that as it relates to automating, there are a lot of things that have the opportunity to be automated. And those are some of the things that you can explore. Okay. Um, so does anybody else have any questions they would like to verbalize as we close in on the end of this session? I really appreciate the questions that have come in so far as well, but I don't want this session to go beyond an hour. So if there are any other questions, I am happy to take them. All right. Oh, sorry. Okay. So then maybe what I will do at this point is um, just wrap up with a few closing points that I would say. One, I would share, because each time I talk, I get asked about kind of like which AI tools do I use and for what. So I think I'll share those very quickly, and then we can call it a day. So I would say there's life beyond ChatGPT. So for me personally, I have like three go-to tools or three go-to AI tools that I use. One is, yes, ChatGPT, but what I find ChatGPT is very good for is brainstorming, creating things that are more on the creative side, let's say. I also use Claude. Claude is from Anthropic, but I use Claude because Claude is not so creative, and it's better when you want to now move towards more serious writing or serious. I, I think when you want to engage AI on a more serious level, I find Claude is very good for that. And so, what Claude is also very good for is if you use things like Excel or Google Sheets, or you do coding, Claude is excellent when it comes to that. ChatGPT, not very good. It will start you off, even with Excel and formulas and everything, because I've used it to build a couple dashboards. What happens is after a while, it begins to kind of get lost and stuck and go down this rabbit hole where it just starts to give you these long stretches of code that are completely incorrect. So I recommend ChatGPT for the creative side, copy side. I recommend Claude for copy, not as flashy and flowery, but strong copy, plus more of the mathematical side and the formula side. The third one that I recommend to people a lot is also Perplexity. Now, Perplexity is awesome when you need to do research or serious writing, especially anything that needs to references. Then Perplexity is your go-to because it is able to scrape the web. So what that means is like it will scour the web, look for current articles, related articles, wherever it must look, it will look. But any answer that it gives you, it will tell you where you found it. And that is really, really important. And so there's a concept when it comes to AI that you should be aware of. Some of you may or may not know. So there's this term called hallucinations. Hallucination simply is when you ask an AI tool a question and it gives you an answer that is like super convincing, looks as accurate as it can be, and it is completely false. That is what a hallucination is called. And ChatGPT is really good for hallucinations. Claude also hallucinates, but to a lesser extent, I have found. And then Perplexity, really low on hallucinations. And a quick example of that was one time I was writing an article, um, and I wanted, it was in a Ghanaian context, so I wanted some research done and some examples. And this one was Claude even, it wasn't ChatGPT. It was Claude. I went in, I said, can you give me what people are saying around a particular topic? And it came back, it generated a draft of the article. It put in quotes, I remember, from 3 university professors. It named them like Ghanaian names. It gave the quotes, everything, but it didn't give references. So I said, okay, can you please just give me the references so that I can double check where you got this information from? And the thing came back and said, well, those aren't really real references. It was just for illustrative purposes only. So would I now like it to go and find actual comments? And so if you get into that habit of just copying and pasting what the AI tools will give you, sometimes you'll be in trouble. You'll be in really serious trouble. So get to know the tools, get to know the differences. They each have their strengths and weaknesses. And if you do that, then I think there's a lot that you can do as well. And some really cool features that are now happening. This is my last tip, and then we're done. Some really cool features is now all of these ChatGPT, Pod, Perplexity, and maybe DeepSeek. I don't use DeepSeek a lot, but they now have these things that they call spaces or projects, which is pretty cool because it allows you to kind of, let's say you want to have a chat around, um, oh, not a football person, but okay, no, football is a bad example. Let's say you wanted to have a conversation around something to do with your business or whatever. And you wanted to be able to kind of come back to it and be able to reference what you've spoken about before. When you are doing a chat in AI, there's something called a context window, and each chat has a certain maximum length that once you hit it, it will push you out, like you're not allowed to continue the chat. It will give you an error message. So then you have to continue in a new chat. The problem was that when you continue in a new chat, the new chat can't see the old chat. So you lose that connection. Now, if you take advantage of the projects or the spaces, you can have multiple chats around a certain topic, and the AI is able to kind of read and all across all the chats. So you don't run out of that context window. So that's a free tip for you. And then my last tip is please use the paid versions, especially if you are handling sensitive information. Switch to the paid version. The free version, it's you might as well be comfortable putting everything out there. And that's where we get into data protection, that kind of thing. So invest in the paid versions, which are not very, very expensive, but then it protects your data a bit more. According to them, they say they don't use it to train their models more broadly. And then I believe when you delete the information, then it actually does purge it from their system after a certain time. So 3:57, that has brought us to the end. Hopefully the information was useful, and we will be hosting more of these. So stay tuned for the recording. And I would like to thank everyone who came. So happy Friday. If you are out, get home safely, because when I look out my window, it's pouring rain. So Nice to see everyone, and I wish you a happy rest of the weekend. So thank you all. Bye.